Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hey there. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm very happy that you are back on listening to me today. Although today I am bringing on a dear friend of mine who has been on this podcast several times. It is my friend Chelsea Horton, who is also a relationship anxiety specialist and embodiment practitioner over at her company, Healing Embodied. You can find her over at healing.embodied on Instagram. And she and I have very similar stories and experiences with relationship anxiety and have overcome it in seemingly surprisingly similar ways, even though we have somewhat different approaches. There is a lot of crossover. And I think one of the reasons that we have both collectively found so much peace in our relationships is because we've taken approaches that work. So what we've noticed throughout our friendship and our time in knowing each other is we happen to have this very similar relational beliefs that have brought us a lot of peace. I think although she and I maybe take for granted that we see things this way, we realize that others might not. And my hope is that you will hear the countercultural beliefs in this episode today and apply them to you as you see fit. Maybe they will be liberating for you, maybe not. Also, a little nuance is we're saying countercultural, but you also could consider it to be countercultural because a lot of the cultural beliefs that come today are countercultural to past beliefs. And so we're kind of countering that. But there are some of you that may resonate whichever walks of life you're coming from. You may or may not resonate, and that's okay. A little side note that I wanted to make is that Chelsea and I are both recording this podcast on our respective podcasts. She's got her own podcast over at Healing Embodied also. So just to let you know, there is no formal host in this episode. I am not the host. She is not the host. We're not guests so much on each other's podcasts. We recorded it jointly and we'll be recording it on separate, we will be uploading it on each of our respective podcasts. So enjoy. This is more of a conversation rather than an interview. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer. And that's it. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Let's get into it. So, Natalie, let's share the truth of why we really decided to do this episode today. Yeah, in the same week, we both posted on our social medias. We both posted something that actually is true about our unique relational experiences, about our relationships. And both of our posts in the same week got really misunderstood by followers or whatever, or we both noticed there was a lot of projections, or like people were just not everyone was on the same page as us. So do you want to share more about your experience with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, this has definitely inspired a somewhat polarizing on purpose podcast episode. So I'm glad that we're going to have this conversation, less of an interview and more of a hangout, more of a discussion. Chelsea and I are in each other's WhatsApps all day long sometimes. So we're just hitting record on it now. But yeah, I think I talked about it on I think my last episode, how I was pretty disappointed with the way that my video was received. If you don't know which one I'm talking about, I made a video very recently about like letting my husband sleep in when we had somewhere to go for my work. We had a train to catch, and rather than waking him up, I decided to go get breakfast and trust that when I came back, he would be ready. But I mentioned in there, and this is where the part that I think got misconstrued, I mentioned that I had made peace with the possibility of missing the train. And everyone assumed that because of that, I must be a submissive doormat. And it was really not about that at all. It was just me kind of going with the flow. And for me, this has resulted in so much peace. And it was just a perspective. And there was a lot of nuance and context that I left out because I can't bring 12 years of nuance into a 1.5 minute video. So, it's something I need to come to peace with, that like people are not going to see the full story because there hasn't been a camera on me for 12 years. And if there was, you wouldn't watch it. So like the only thing that really matters is my experience for me personally. But I just know that the level of bliss and profound connection I experience in my relationship is something I don't see a lot of people having. And so I share what creates that, but I think a lot of people don't think I could possibly be happy with that mindset. So I'm hoping that today we can share some like counter cultural and also counter cultural messages that we live by, I guess, in our own relationships. So that's kind of my starting piece. Yeah. What's yours?
And as we were talking about how our posts were being perceived, we realized like, I think the reason why this is getting so many projections and is because you and I both take a pretty countercultural approach to relationships. Like the mainstream relationship advice and relationship perspectives that you see out there are very like perfectionistic, very rigid in a lot of ways. Like if he messes up,
entitled is the word I hear.
Entitled.
Entitled is the word, I think, for me.
Yeah, very entitled. Yeah, say more about that.
To me, it's an entitled energy. For me, there's a big difference between being worthy and being entitled, or the discernment between being deserving of better versus being entitled to better. One of them has a very demanding energy to it, and it lacks humility and appreciation and gratitude.
Yes. Oh, girl. Something else just came up. You posted about this before when you're like, oh, I'm so grateful that my partner, brought me soup when I was sick in bed. And people are like, oh, you're thanking him for something he should be doing. Wow, we've really set the bar very low. It's like, oh,
the bar is on the floor. Yeah.
So now we just can't appreciate someone unless they go above and beyond to prove themselves to us. Like, what?
I know. Yeah, it really scares me, and it happens on both sides. I see it from men and I see it from women, and or regardless of the gender binary, I see this rampant entitlement in partnership, and it's almost like an addiction to being worshipped in partnership, or the idea of being worshipped. And we're so hungry for this magical knight on shining armor that's going to anticipate all of your needs and is going to just bend over backwards for us, because otherwise we're settling. It makes me sad. It makes me sad because it actually takes very little to be deeply happy. But truly, I believe it takes very little. But it is, as long as you are comparing to some grand version that is probably based on something you've seen on the internet, you will not be happy because comparison is the thief of joy. And you won't see what's beautiful right in front of you.
That's right. And so today we want to share 6 countercultural perspectives or beliefs that we hold in our relationships. We each have 3. So we're each going to be sharing. Yep. We're each going to be sharing our 3 and like what that looks like in our relationships. Yeah. Things that you don't see a lot on the world of TikTok relationships where, oh my gosh, how dare you say thank you when he did something that he should be doing.
Right. You're just encouraging the bar to go lower.
Matt didn't say thank you for when I did like a house chore or didn't express appreciation, even though house chores is something we each quote unquote should be doing because it's our house. But if he never said thank you or I appreciate you cooking dinner or I appreciate doing dishes, if he never said thank you because it's something I quote unquote should be doing, seriously, like, okay, it's gonna be a rant.
I mean, at the same time, it's like I also do things without and obviously I'm not saying you didn't say this. It's like I'm sharing both sides. You know, on the one hand, it's so nice to be appreciated for the little things. And I thank my partner for things he should be doing because I know how wonderful it feels for me when I'm appreciated for things that I should be doing. But I also do it without the expectation of being thanked. And so every time I receive that thank you, it just feels like extra. And then what ends up, even though it's quote unquote the bare minimum, it ends up not feeling like the bare minimum because you're not going in with the expectation of being thanked. But then when you do, it's a pleasant surprise and you end up feeling indebted to each other. And I think what I see in most relationships today, and this is kind of a codependency, is like, you owe me something. And then the other one's like, no, you owe me something. And they have a culture of resentment. Yeah, something I see in our culture today is a culture of resentment, which I think comes from perceiving that you are owed something from the other person. You owe me this. And both people are feeling it. Both people feel like they are owed something. And I call that a negative spiral where it just gets worse and worse and worse. But there's also what we might call an upward spiral, which is a culture of feeling indebted to the other. And this is the exact opposite of resentment, where you feel like you can never do enough for your partner in a good way because of how much they do for you. And this is what happens when you say thank you constantly and you are constantly thanked. You create this currency of gratitude in the relationship that is just really so fulfilling. And you get thanked for the big things and you get thanked for the small things and vice versa. But I think when we are going at it from what we can take, then we're not focusing on what we can give, and we're not actually loving wholeheartedly. We're loving with strings attached. And in my opinion, we are in long-term partnership and marriage. If you are wanting to get married, you do so to practice unconditional love. That's the whole point. Otherwise, why? So unconditional love is a practice. And when both people are doing it, it's something quite extraordinary.
Yeah. So I guess technically today is 7 countercultural relationship practices because, this is one of them, saying thank you, even when you're, expressing appreciation and gratitude, even when your partner does something they quote unquote should be doing. Like, I create a culture of gratitude and admiration and indebtedness versus you owe me, it's not enough to do the dishes. It's like you need to be going above and beyond. So that's actually
I don't need to say thank you. I'm entitled to that thing that you're doing. I'm entitled to your time. I'm entitled to your attention. I'm entitled to your body. There's no reverence for the other person and their history and their experience and their inner world.
Oof, I love that. Reverence for the other person. Like something that an approach I see, Matt, is like, you chose to do life with me. Like, wow. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes.
Wow. That is the highest honor I could receive, is for someone to choose to do life with me. Not because I think I'm a piece of shit and no one's ever going to love me. And oh my gosh, wow, someone loved me. It's like, whoa. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I'm awesome. Duh. But like, I'm also a human being, and life is hard, and committing to someone in the challenges of life is hard, and you've chosen to do that with me. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's quite an honor. And to
Mhm.
treat it like the honor that it is very humbling, and it's quite a practice. And it requires a willingness to be wrong.
Mhm.
If you're really seeing the other person, you will see your own limitations and how you behave and things like that.
Yes.
It's so
Abs-
beautiful.
Absolutely. You will
Yeah,
see
and a
your
lot
own.
of people don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
um,
So
so
let's
let's
get into the
start.
other six.
The other
Or the other,
six. Well,
yeah,
that
well,
was the first one, right? This the
that was
first
the
of the
that was the
seven.
shared first one.
I say thank you, even if even if he should be doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. So who's gonna go first? I guess we can go back and forth.
You can start us off.
Okay. Um, so this one is, it's helpful if I share some context. This is actually a sentence that came to me in like a meditation session for me. Um, and when I first heard it, I knew it was a soft, gentle voice, and it was the sentence that came to me was so radical, but it was like a whisper, and it was like, take it or leave it. But I'm just putting this there. And I wanted to reject it so bad, but it had that ring of truth to it. Especially considering the life I'd been living prior to hearing that sentence. And the sentence is this: I receive what I am given. And when I first heard the sentence in my mind, I knew it came from somewhere divine. But I was like, what? What do you mean I receive what I'm given? And I've been pondering on that sentence for a while because it sounds very almost passive or submissive in a way. And it's the opposite of what I've lived by for a long time. It's very counter to the to the don't settle culture. Most of the messages I've heard are don't settle in your partner, don't settle in how much money you can make, don't settle in your business. Just keep going. If you can go for more, go for more. And never be satisfied with what you have. Just keep going. And the message I receive, what I'm given, was such a soft, quiet, humble voice that said, like, say yes to what is. And that's kind of how I've interpreted it. But that also, I've applied it to my relationship heavily in terms of I receive what I'm given by my partner. And I don't mean given in the sense of like gift giving, although it's included in that. That is included in that sentence. But more so, if my partner doesn't have time for me, I consider that something that's happening to me. My partner says no to me, or my partner disappoints me. I consider that a life circumstance. I teach, and when I work with my clients, I teach the inner work and the outer work. And eventually we realize it's one and the same. There's no separation. It's all the same because we're all one. But I don't see things in terms of me and my partner. I see things in terms of inner and outer, and my partner is included in the outer. So my partner showing up to me a certain way, that's just life showing up a certain way for me. And I receive what I'm given means not that I'm unwilling to do something in the direction of what I desire, but I am saying yes to what is. And for me, I receive what I am given means I'm willing to be disappointed in my relationship. And I'm not in resistance to my partner and how he behaves. I say yes to what is. Like if he disappoints me, or God forbid, I say something hoping he's going to respond a certain way and he doesn't respond in that way, I receive that too, because he's an autonomous human and he's not supposed to respond in the exact way that I think he should. If I wanted that, I should have just married myself. So I receive what I'm given means I accept him as he is. And I also I don't just accept the outer, I also accept the inner, which means I accept my own emotions. So if he disappoints me, I accept myself in that moment. So it's not just like tolerating, it's also honoring my inner experience in response to the outer. So for me, I receive what I'm given sounds kind of weird, but if I were to say like the more countercultural belief embedded inside of that, I would say I am willing to get hurt. I'm willing to be disappointed by my partner / life.
Mm-hmm. And paradoxically, when we're willing to receive all that life has to offer, the wide range of the human experience, we open ourselves up to feel more joy and love.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you close yourself off to the unpleasant, you close yourself off to all of it.
Exactly. And when I first heard this little whisper in meditation, I receive what I'm given, including my emotions, including my experiences, including what's happening in the world. It's not about being passive and not taking action in terms, I really want to say that this is not a passive statement. It's just in the infinitesimal moment of isness, I'm saying yes as if I chose it in a way so that I can fully be here with what is. It's a very deep principle. And here's the thing, if I'm not in resistance to disappointment, for instance, then all of a sudden I don't need to control my partner anymore because I'm okay with him letting me down. And the paradox is when I am not in control of my partner, I have given him the gift of free will. And the paradox is when you give your partner the gift of free will, then they can choose you of their own free will. And then all of a sudden, you know that they're doing something for you, not because you made them do it, not because you wanted to avoid disappointment, but because they wanted to, which isn't that what all of us want anyway? Don't you want him to take out the trash because he wanted to, not because you made him do it? That's only possible if you are in acceptance of being disappointed. And that is so hard for people to wrap their minds around. But that deep bliss of being met authentically only happens when you receive your partner as they are and give them room to let you down.
Mm-hmm. And I can hear all the yeah butters.
I know they're
Yeah.
there. And that's why I say, I'm sharing this in the same
saying that if your partner is abusive to you, that you should just accept that.
No,
That's not
no.
what I'm friggin' saying, y'all. Okay?
I mean, that's a really valid concern. So I hear that. And I'm not referring to accepting and tolerating abuse. I'm talking about run of the mill. He didn't take the trash out. He misinterpreted you, dismissed you even. You shared something from your heart and he just totally missed it. Like I'm talking about saying yes to that. So he missed it and you say in your mind, I receive what I'm given this moment. I've been dismissed. And not punishing in that moment and saying, maybe now is not the time. Maybe I caught him at a bad time. And I'm deserving of a good response, but I'm not entitled to it. I don't always get what I want because I'm not a screaming toddler.
Yeah.
I don't throw a tantrum whenever I don't receive what I want. That's part of being a grown-up is like your partner is not going to meet your need at every single moment, just like a parent's not going to meet, every demand of a toddler. And if you're going to kick and scream every time your partner doesn't meet your needs, you have some reparenting to do. So, and I share this in a quiet, gentle way, in the same way it was somehow shared to me in that meditation session. It was kind of like, you don't have to take it, but I'm just putting this out there. You can decide what you want to do with it. And I'm sharing that sentence in the same way. You can decide if you hate it, don't take it, but I'm just quietly putting it there. If you ever get tired of the way you're doing things and you want to try another mindset of humility and acceptance. So it's a quieter path and it's counter to the screaming that you're seeing all over social media. But to me, it has brought me so much deep peace. I can't even describe it in words.
Yeah. So counter to what we hear, but it's, the fundamental principles of like Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie, like all the, spiritual teachers, even like Buddhism, just
yes
like
to what is.
Yes to what is, because everything else is madness.
Yes. And you can still feel into what needs to be done.
Right. Right.
So it's not passive. It's a line. It's a straight line. It's like a narrow path. of doing what needs to be done while also not being in resistance to the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so we'll move on from there. What's yours?
okay.
Number one, Chelsea.
So my personal countercultural relationship belief is I don't need my partner to like all the things that I like, to be similar to me in order to be deeply fulfilled and happy. And I realized how countercultural this was when, a week or so ago, I shared this post that was designed to specifically outline the differences in interests and perspectives that me and Matt have, and the challenges that can put in front of us. And to love someone is to allow them to be who they are without him needing to be what I want him to be, so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable. And like I dance is like my passion. Dance is one of the biggest things about me, and Matt doesn't dance. And I'm not going to drag him to be like, well, we need to be doing this together. And, this relationship coach on Instagram commented on my post saying I'd be so much happier if you would go dancing with me. And it's just, I have just learned through, it'll be 9 years in less than a month. I learned through 9 years of experience of like, oh, wait, these 9 years, we have not gone dancing together once. And we have such this beautiful, fulfilling, wonderful partnership. And that for me, compatibility isn't about having all the same interests, all the same perspectives, all the same beliefs. It's, can we navigate our differences, our inevitable differences, with love and appreciation and respect, and actually not just accept them, but appreciate them and see how they bring balance to the relationship, instead of only seeing the things about Matt that are different from me as like this negative thing, because it's not like me. And obviously the way I am is just better. To actually see what is really, really good and helpful about the fact that he's different from me in this way. And that has, again, brought even more appreciation, gratitude, fulfillment, laughter, and joy to the relationship. Because I know if I'm lacking in one area, he makes up for it in another area. And for some reason, that's countercultural. People are like, no, find someone who has all the same beliefs and hobbies, and you'd be so much more fulfilled if you could do all these things together. And it's like, I personally don't believe that. Like, sure, that's wonderful to be able to experience those things together, but for me, it's not an absolute necessity in order to feel happy and fulfilled in a relationship. And I'm actually happier when I allow Matt to be who he is, similar to what you were saying. When I allow Matt to be who he is, instead of believing that he needs to be like me.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. And I'm just going to throw this in there as someone who is in a 12-year relationship with a man who didn't dance and then started to dance 2 years ago. I wouldn't say that particular thing I used to want my partner to dance so bad, and I wanted him to come to yoga. I wanted him to go to meditation things. I wanted him to be more spiritual. And now that he is those things, I'm like, that didn't solve anything.
Exactly.
As someone who's gone from not having the dancing partner to having the dancing partner, it didn't solve anything. If anything, it created new problems. There's like jealousy in the picture now of like he's dancing with someone. So I just, we maybe solved, I'm putting, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I'm putting air quotes in here. We solved one quote unquote problem and replaced it with a new one. And, so I don't think it's about the dancing. It's if I were to go deeper, I would say, like, what is this need that you think you're getting, you think that you would get if they were to dance? I'm guessing it's probably something like attunement, which you can get through a myriad of things that are not dancing. So what I'm hearing is that you don't need to dance with Matt to feel attuned to him. My guess is you have other things that you do together that make you feel very seen. And personally, I am very grateful that my husband dances now. It's like another way of communicating. It's another language that we can communicate in, but it's not the main way that we communicate. We communicate in like 95% of our communication is not through dance. It's just another way. And also, be open to being surprised. Maybe Matt one day will be like, you know what? I'm going to shake my ass up there because I don't give a fuck anymore. I could see that happening one day, but it happens, as I said, of their own free will and not because you made them and not because you guilted them. Like I still think it could happen. And, Matt and Preston are going to be at some dance floor someday just twerking. No.
Yeah, I can't picture it. But yeah, it just goes back to like, if I believe that Matt needs to, be on the dance floor with me in order for me to be happy, because I can't be with my own disappointment, or I can't find that happiness within myself, then I'm always going to try to control him.
Right.
It's like, I need you to do this to take away the discomfort I feel, because I have this story that I'll only be happy if we like all the same things and believe all the same things. It's just a very limited definition of happiness, and it's contingent, it's dependent, it's this outsourcing. Like I will only be
no control over that.
Right. Yeah, it's to me, it's like part of it is a lack of personal ownership of like you're allowed to be your own person and have your own things and be fine with that.
It's a very entitled mindset, I think.
Yeah.
And also it's incredibly disrespectful to the other person and their humanness and autonomy. So yeah, it's a lot of times we have this very narrow view of how our needs are going to be met. And it's not always true. There are many ways to get the need met for attunement that dancing can bring. And people are assuming that because he's not dancing with you, that you're not attuned. And that's absolutely false. I have seen you both, and it is very evident that you guys have a unique flavor of attunement that I've never seen with any other couple. You guys have your own chemistry between you two, sarcastic, playful banter that is just so beautiful to watch. It's almost like you guys are in on some inside joke that nobody else gets. It's almost like borderline abusive from the outside. If you didn't know, then you would think it's almost abusive. But because you're both in on this joke, my assumption is it brings you that much more closer. You almost enjoy pissing off people. Yes.
I've actually, there were times where he would introduce me to some of his friends. There's this couple, we went out to dinner with them and I was meeting them for the first time. And we were just being ourselves, this kind of sarcastic banter that we have that's so normal for us. And apparently like that night the friend told her husband, like, he does not treat her well. And she's a goddess. And why do they speak to each other that way? And then they hung out with us another time. And they're like, oh, and they told us that story of that initial perception of us. And then they're like, oh, these two people are crazy about each other.
Yes.
And this is like I love that you called it like this joke that only we're in on, because that's what it feels like. It's like our own world, our own language. And it's kind of
like,
funny.
I don't get it, but I know that you guys are in on something.
It's funny that most people don't get it. And like you said, there's kind of this pleasure in confusing people.
You go ahead and think it's abusive and hate it. I see the kink in that. It reminds me. It reminds me of two lions. When they swipe each other, are you going to call it abuse? You guys are both knit from the same fibers. And so because of that, and now I find this so funny because I hear the same Anxiety. It's like the people that thought you guys had such a terrible relationship now are talking about it, and now they're probably like, I don't have that. I'm not knit from the same fiber with my partner. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting
Right.
that
Tell
like
me
you were
something.
judging from one angle, and from another angle, it's like, oh shit, now you're jealous. So this is how relationships are. It's never a lot of what you see online. It's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is either.
Right.
It just is, and you're never gonna know.
That's right.
And
your
what works
own
for Chelsea might
relationship.
not work for me, and vice
Oh,
versa.
I have friends who are like, I could never be in a relationship with someone like that. Because
Well,
they're like,
you're not them and they're not you, so it works out.
right. And also because like their humor is just not like that. And even with most of my girlfriends, the humor that I have with most of my female friends is not highly sarcastic, but that's actually something I really love. I love sarcasm. And so Matt is like one of the few, I think it might also maybe be like a male thing. Matt is one of the few people who can take it and dish it.
Yeah. I get it.
So it's very fun. And we've said before, like, why is that something about us? And we realize like we don't ever like real fight a lot. That's like something very rare that happens in our relationship, like real fighting or arguing. And so it's like, well, we gotta have that fiery energy somewhere. So we just kind of fake fight all day.
Yes. It's so many people avoid tension and think that
Yeah.
tension is bad, but tension is actually where all the magic happens. Think
Mhm.
about, in the tango, if someone's too loose, there's no connection, but if there's too rigid, you can't move with them. And the same if you think of like a bow and arrow, if you don't pull it at all, it just goes, and if you pull it too much, the bow snaps. So finding tension is actually where the good stuff is. The same in business, like making an investment that stretches you but doesn't break you.
Yes.
Tension is so important actually. And a lot of people don't know how to just hang out in it. But hanging out in tension, the sweet spot of tension is where all the magic is. And you guys have that tension going on all the time, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. And I a lot of times when I talk about a relationship, I say how like quote unquote boring it is, meaning like we love sitting on the couch together and watching our shows. Like we don't go, like we're not the type of couple like you and Preston who could like go travel the world. Like that's just like, that's too stressful for
It's
us. We
not
like
everybody's cup of tea.
we like to be chill. We always say how, boring our relationship is. So to like see our relationship through your eyes and outside perspective of like actually how flirtatious it is. Because that's really what it is. This like banter is always how I've flirted, is like this kind of, I give you a little prick and see if you respond. Yes, I give you a little prick because I want you to respond and I want you to prick me back. And then we're going to go.
Yeah, I see it as a sweet spot, but it's that tension between pleasure and pain. And I mentioned this on my podcast, and then we should keep going because we could just make a whole podcast on just this topic. But Preston and I, we are so secure in each other now that like we can banter about the open relationship that we never really have like really entertained the idea of acting on, but like it's on the table almost as a juicy little possibility. And that creates, because just like you and Matt, things are so safe, so stable, so secure that just like having that there creates just the right amount of tension to keep things interesting. Even if we don't act on it, just having it be a part of the conversation, the possibility of it, it keeps things interesting. It keeps us respecting each other and appreciating each other. I think it was Esther Perel that said, the affair is not good. The affairs are not good. They're really not good. But also not having any tension in the relationship is not good either, because there's no aliveness. So she said the sweet spot almost feels like having a slight threat to the relationship is a good thing, but it needs to be conscious, a chosen threat. So whether it's like this, where's the edge of abuse that we can get to where it's still pleasurable and painful? And for me, it's like, where's the sweet spot between introducing some pain into the relationship. This is existential kink. What pain can I introduce to the relationship consciously that adds aliveness and tension? So I could talk about that all day, but it sounds like you guys have created this, to go back to your point about, you guys don't need to be similar at all. You guys have a strong polarity and are strongly opposite. And as a result, you guys have this tension created by these supposed incompatibilities that you guys are using to your advantage.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I see anyway.
I love that perspective. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, we've already talked for a long time.
I know.
Next one. We'll rip through these other ones. We'll rip through.
Oh my God. Okay. So my second one is, it's kind of similar to what you said. I settled and I am deeply fulfilled. And I guess it depends on your definition of settling, but I hate this word. Everyone I know that uses the word settling is deeply unhappy. Anyone that has this word in their vocabulary and uses it consistently, I find that they are riddled with anxiety. And rather than just throwing out the word, they're trying to make sure that they fit into this box of settling versus not settling. And it forces you to almost be the mindset. It's not doing what it used to do, which is to inspire you to push beyond your limits of, like, maybe in the past when you had Joe Schmo and Eric and Dawn were your three choices of partners in marriage, to not settle. Maybe our grandparents or our parents, stretched beyond that to explore, finding a lover in Europe or another country. I feel like that was very empowering. But now with all these options at our fingertips, settling is a weird concept considering we have all the choices and you're trying to calculatedly optimize your choice of partner from a place of entitlement that you deserve the very best. And it's not that you don't deserve the very best, but my God, you're going to be searching forever. And no one's going to be good enough because there is no perfect partner.
And there's always that fantasy of, like, well, there's so many people in the world, there could be someone better.
Yes.
So I can never be satisfied because there's that possibility.
You'll never receive what you're given. You'll never choose someone and receive them daily because you're going to be hoping you receive someone or something else. So by my standards, settling, the only, I think, context where settling is useful is if you are in a relationship with someone who treats you very poorly and with disrespect and is potentially abusive. But if you've got a good enough partner, someone who treats you with love, they're just rather imperfect and disappoint you frequently. Frequently, in fact, you will be disappointed frequently, but they are still a good person and they still have your best interests at heart and they still want you to be happy. That's one of my metrics also, is your partner wants you to be happy. One of my things is with my clients, I say, I want you to focus on your self-care and doing whatever you need to feel alive in the same way that you would if you were single. So if you didn't have this partner here and you couldn't rely on them for your happiness, what would you do? And they're like, oh God, I don't know. It's been so long since I imagined myself as a single being. I'm like, that is the problem. And once you start getting happier, for me, the metric of an abusive relationship or not is when you get happier, does your partner resent you for it and hate you? Do they not want you to be happy? Does the relationship get worse when you take care of yourself? Or does it get better because you're not burdening them and they feel more free? So if you take care of yourself and the relationship gets better, you're not in an abusive relationship. You were just outsourcing your happiness to that person. So for me, if you're with a partner that wants you to be happy and supports you in cultivating your own joy, you are not settling. However, in societal standards, it may feel that way because maybe they're a bit socially awkward or they're not
the hottest guy in the room.
They're not the hottest guy in the room, or, they're a little skinny, or they're a little chubby, or their teeth are a little crooked, or their nose is a little crooked, or they have some body odor. Like that stuff, if you have any desire for a long-term partnership and to be with someone for life, which is what I want to know what it's like to be with someone for life and to grow through the seasons. That's my desire. It might not be everyone's, but if that's what you want, if you want a potentially lifelong partnership, you're going to go through seasons of sickness and ugliness and stinkiness and awkwardness and shame and depression and all of those things that humans go through. And they're not going to be good looking and attractive during that time. And if you have the word settling in your vocabulary and you let that word slip in during human moments, you're going to be very riddled with anxiety. This is why I accept what I'm given, because, that includes a temporarily depressed husband for 6 months. I accept my temporarily depressed husband because I have it in me to be a temporarily depressed wife for 6 months. And I would hate for someone to let me go and not see my brilliance because of that. And so I extend that outwards also. If someone, I don't want someone to see themselves as settling by being with me, and I'm really fucked up.
Yes, 100%. My nose is crooked as fuck. And if Matt was like, well, I'm settling because this bitch doesn't have a straight enough nose for me. So I'd be like,
right?
wah, wah.
Don't be that person. Don't be that person. And I understand it's rooted in trauma and things like that, but don't be that person who, the way I see it is you don't act on the thought. You don't have to fight the thought. You just see the thought. And then you decide what kind of person you want to be in spite of the thought. Oh, his breath stinks. Okay. Okay. So what? You don't have to judge. You don't have to make meaning out of it. You just see the thought. You feel the little ick for about 5 seconds, and then you move on with your life. You don't need to do anything about it. I understand that's easier said than done.
Yeah, we're all going to have critical thoughts about our partners, about ourselves. We're all going to have moments of ick with our partners, with ourselves. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this big catastrophe.
And they probably have the ick about you sometimes.
Yeah, I'm disgusting.
I know that for sure. I know Preston's like, have you showered today? And I'm like,
I get that question too. I'm like, what are you trying to say?
Oh, funny. All right, that's my point. What's yours? What's your next one?
Okay, this goes very much with my first one. I'm realizing these all feed into each other. Trying to make my partner what I think they should be is not love, it's control. And I see this a lot with clients. It's like, I just want them to want the best for themselves. I want them to be the best that they can be. And I want them to be more like this. And I want them to be more like this. And I want them to go on this journey that I've gone on. And, I did that.
They just married themselves.
Exactly. I did that too. And I realized that trying to make Matt into who I think he should be or who I think I need is not actually practicing love. Like, that is not the definition. My definition of love is I need you to be something other than what you are.
I would argue that it's abusive. Not saying the person's abusive, but that's an abusive tactic.
Yes, it is. It's
and we all have it in us to do it. So I've done that too.
And I used to do it in these subtle kind of manipulative ways where I kept trying to have these conversations with him to try to convince him to think the way I did or to see things the way I did. It's like, I have to convince you to be different than what you are because I want the best for you. And the way I see things is the best, obviously, because I am the most enlightened being on planet Earth. And so I'm doing this because I love you. Okay. No, it's control. So there's not much more to say about that one.
Yeah, I hear you. I've done the same thing. And it's very easy to identify yourself as the victim, but it's hard to identify yourself as the bully. And when I saw myself as the bully in the relationship, I could not unsee it. It's icky. It's icky. Yeah. And I know I mentioned, that's abusive behavior. This is the thing that we accuse like people like narcissists of doing. I've done it. I've tried to subtly manipulate my partner, and it was very uncomfortable to see the narcissist in myself and the bully in myself. if you see it, it's a good thing. I think if you're willing to see the bully in yourself, it can be a game changer, and it can be humiliating, and the humility will open you, and you can say, I am so sorry for being so disrespectful when I try to control you. I've said that sentence many times. So I'm sorry for being disrespectful when I try to control your hair or your books that you're reading or what supplements you're taking or what kind of, I used to get on my partner for like working out without stretching. It's like, excuse me, how would I like it if someone was policing my exercise routine? He's not my personal trainer, so I'm not his either. I'm not his therapist. So why am I telling him to look at his inner child stuff? How disrespectful. It's gross. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And we don't need to freak out when we see ourselves doing these things. We're not bad people. We all have these tendencies because we're human. And this is how humans deal with discomfort.
Mm-hmm. We try to control instead of
control.
receiving what we're given.
Yeah. All right. Your last beautiful one.
Yep. My last countercultural belief that I live by is I am 100% responsible for my own aliveness, pleasure, sense of meaning, and purpose. And a lot of people, I think, are very frightened by this belief because they say, if I'm 100% responsible for my aliveness and pleasure, then why be in a relationship? And to that, I say, there's a difference between having someone complete you in your empty spots and being complete in and of yourself and sharing the love that you are. And it feels so good to share love as opposed to need love in whatever form that is, whether it's validation or affection or compliments or reassurance or appreciation or acts of service, whatever fucking love language you think that you need. I don't have one. I want all of them. I don't know why we were told we just have one. I was like, I want the gifts. I want the acts of service. I want the quality time. I want all of them, and I want them in equal amounts. And why the fuck would I choose? So for me, whatever your love language is, if you have a hole inside of you and your partner must act in accordance with your love language or else, this is the thing I hate about love languages. It's like, oh, because my love language is acts of service, then you are entitled, or you are obligated, and I am entitled to you acting in a very specific way. And if you're not, well, you're not meeting my love language. And it's like, we need to expand our ability to receive love in more than this one tiny narrow way. I don't have one. I am all of them. And because of that, I'm able to receive my partner as he is and see the many ways he's loving me, not just in the ways that I'm expecting. So the good news is when my self-care is top notch, like superb, friendships, water, sleep, cooking food at home, eating healthy food, getting vitamin D, sunshine, vitamins, getting checkups, getting massages, getting manicures, like really taking good care of myself. And I understand this is a privilege and capitalism is a variable here that not everyone has access to. And I see you, I hear you. I'm referring to working with what you do have control over. Like if you have pockets of self-care that you could be taking advantage of and yet you are not, that's what I'm talking about. Maximize the potential of your self-care and your aliveness. Do what you can. And when you are 100% fulfilled, you will be able to appreciate your partner for what they add on top of that, as opposed to instead of that. And so many people, they enter. So did you see, there's a trend on TikTok right now, Chelsea. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called the boyfriend effect. Have you seen that trend?
I think I saw one. I don't go on TikTok a lot because it honestly pisses me off. It really
pisses me off
watch
too.
The dogs and the food.
It's basically women who share photos of themselves when they're single versus photos of themselves when they're in a relationship. And the whole point is that a relationship makes you worse, feel and look worse.
Oh, I saw one. It was like the guy before he got with his girlfriend And then after he got with his girlfriend, he was like so much more stylish and stuff. That's the only one I saw.
The one I saw were women who were like way hotter when they were single. And then when they got in a relationship, they got lazy and fatter and uglier. And they called it the relationship effect. And I said, you're creating a causation that's not there. A lot of people enter partnership expecting that their partner is going to do the work of maintaining them. And that is not true. You have to maintain yourself in the same exact way that you were when you were single. When you enter partnership, they're not going to like magically replace your aliveness for you. It's the biggest myth ever, meaning, what my husband said this once. He said that whenever he goes out, he tries to dress like he's going to run into his high school crush that day. So he doesn't want to be with his high school crush, but he has the mindset of staying at his best, even while he's with me. And this is done as a gift to himself and as a gift to the relationship. We get each other at our best. So there is something to be said about that. Entering the relationship does not cause you to lose your fire. That is 100% a choice based on this belief that your partner should now do that work for you. That is a lie. You are still completely responsible for yourself in the same way that you were when you're single. You're now just sharing your life with someone, but they are not going to do the work for you as soon as you enter partnership. So that's my belief. I'm just as responsible for my aliveness and happiness now as I was when I was single. And it took me a long time to unlearn that Preston was not here to make me feel good about myself and alive about myself. That's my job. He adds to that, to my already overflowing joy.
Right. He's a mirror to that versus like you said, the replacement of you having to do that work.
And then and then I hear the questions of being like, then why enter partnership with someone if they're not going to like compliment you in a certain way or add value? And to that I say, it's not that he doesn't add value. It's that he's not replacing a hole inside. He's not filling a void. He's not here to fill a void.
Yeah.
That's your work.
And for me, it's like the reason why I love being in partnership is because like, yes, I'm responsible for my own aliveness and I'm fine like doing that myself, but I just genuinely enjoy doing life alongside someone. I really, really cherish sharing, like you said, sharing love and sharing life with someone, not because, he somehow now makes me more worthy or like now I believe I'm worthy of love. It's like, no, I do that work for myself to believe that. But like, it just genuinely, for me, I like it better. Just for me personally, not everyone does. Like,
Yep. I'm the same.
I'm a penguin. I just love.
Yeah. And I remember one of my aunt, she once told me that marriage is really just having someone to witness your existence. And that's a beautiful perspective because witnessing does not mean fixing. Witnessing does not mean
rescuing.
Witnessing is not rescuing. You're sharing the space together. You're witnessing each other. You're witnessing each other through thick and thin, through sickness and through health. And you're, when you are old and you're going to pass away and your existential you are going to be forgotten one day, but you will know that someone knew you. Someone knew what kind of shampoo you use. Someone knew that you didn't like that. Someone knew that you liked some weird ingredient on your avocado toast. Someone knew that like you hated the smell of, I don't know, anchovies really badly, or someone knew little things about you. Your life had relevance. So love is really about being witnessed and witnessing someone, but people don't see it that way. And there's something so beautiful about someone knowing you exist on a deep level.
Yeah. Knowing all the things that seem quote unquote unimportant.
Yeah.
But that's intimacy. It's just like, I know these little details about you that no one else would maybe even care to know.
Yeah.
I know that you like this thing. And so when I go to the store and I see it, I get it for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody's entitled to a witness. It's a gift.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they're going to catch every miraculous thing about you. You know, personally, I want to be witnessed all day long. Why do you think I have an Instagram? You know what? People's longing to be witnessed and to have significance, it's turned into narcissism, unfortunately. I hear the longing, and I have it also in myself, and that's why I make content. You know, don't get me wrong, when I go make content on social media, it is because I want attention. Don't get me wrong. But I don't feel entitled to it, and when I get it, I'm thankful, and I try not to be too attached to it. But I don't. What we're really longing for is to be seen, and unfortunately, on social media, you may get views, but you're not actually seen. And I find that in partnership, you can be seen through the little things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So
You may get views, but you're not being seen.
Yeah, that's so true. Because you're quote unquote seen as what you portray, like just the one part of you that you portray. So it's not
What
even
people
real.
want to see you as.
It's yeah.
And we have one more, I believe, from you.
Yes. And I think again, this goes with everything that we've been saying. Yeah, I'm okay with my partner being imperfect and not fully evolved.
Go off on the fully evolved part, because I think that one's the particularly spicy piece.
Yeah, I feel like
particularly polarizing.
Like in the manifestation, conscious relationship, spiritual, like relationship coaching realm, it's like there seems to be this like expectation that like you need to be fully evolved, fully healed, fully this, in order for someone to be deserving of your love and your commitments. And they can't be in process. They need to be a fully manifested product, a fully manifested thing that like is complete and is not like in process or growing or has potential in other areas that is not yet.
God forbid you settle for potential.
Yeah, there's just, I don't know. It's like I think about how much I have quote unquote evolved since Matt first met me. And I'm like, I think about the person I was when we first met. And I was like, literally, Matt, how did you put up with that? How did you put up with me when I thought that way? Like, oh my God, I cringe at myself. My bad self. I love her. I love her so much. I know where she was coming from, but like sometimes I'm like, oh girl, oh girl.
Sit down.
Yeah. I'm like, girl. And I'm just like, wow, I'm so grateful that I can still be seen as worthy, even though there were a lot of areas that I'm sure Matt even was like, she needs to grow in these areas, you know? And the thing I loved about him in the beginning was like, he had this trust that I would. He's like, I see something in you that's unfolding. It's not, I'm sure he wouldn't use these words, but this is my perception of his perception. I see something in you that's unfolding, that's incomplete, but I trust in that process for you. And I don't need it to be rushed, and I don't need to control how that looks.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Not that it's easy to be in the discomfort of the unfolding and the unfinished and the still evolving, but I try to extend that to Matt too. There are definitely some things where I was like, well, I'm a little bit more involved on my stance on this thing than you are. You're still a little bit like influenced by the patriarchy. How dare you?
God forbid.
Oh my God. You've been conditioned into it your whole life, but like, come on, get with it. Excuse me. But it's like, I trust that that's unfolding for him. It might not unfold at the pace that I would want it to be, or I quote unquote think it should, but I don't see him as any less worthy of my love because he's not fully evolved in the way that I think he should be fully evolved in something.
Yeah. And I don't think there is ever, I think this belief, in my opinion, comes from a belief that there is an arrival point of evolution.
Right.
And there was this book I read recently. I think Africa Brooke mentioned it on her Instagram, The Courage to be Disliked. Did you ever read that one?
I did not, but I've seen her talk about.
Ooh, that is a counter cultural book, let me tell you. I was very surprised. But there was a lot of really good stuff in it. And one of the things he said is that we are all walking the path, but nobody's in front of or behind each other. There's only your own comparison with yourself and the version of yourself that you could be. But there's no hierarchy between each of us. There's just your own potential. The only person you should really compare yourself to is yourself. So I think a lot of times when we're comparing paths of other people, it's coming from, again, as I mentioned before, this entitlement. And I think we're afraid of accepting our partners as they are, because we think that if they don't evolve, that we're not going to be seen, or we're not going to be witnessed in the way that we want, or our needs are not going to get met. And that's why it's so important to hold that perspective that you are responsible for yourself and your own emotions. And they don't owe you anything, and you don't owe them anything. You give it to them out of your own free will, and they give it to you out of theirs. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that I can also relate a lot to the past version of myself that thought she was very evolved. And I actually, when my husband, last night, Preston was like talking about like drug addiction. He was like, why do people get addicted? In my mind, I was like, dude, I know. And I wanted to like go into therapist mode and be like, this is why. And I wanted to teach him the things he did not know. And I saw that impulse to become the expert. Sometimes I literally bite my tongue. And I said, there's a lot of information online. Like, if you really want to know, you can go look it up and evolve. But I don't, I don't see myself in the role or position to educate. I see a lot of content online that I saw this video a long time ago that said, if you're a woman in a heterosexual relationship with a man, you will perpetually be in a position to educate him. And I was like, what? No, that only comes from the perspective that there is a way to be. And that you know how things should be. And he doesn't know anything. And he's this stupid buffoon, has no wisdom in his way of doing things. And so therefore,
and no ability to learn in his own way.
Yeah. And it might be a different way than yours, and it might still be right. So
that's not possible.
It's
not my way, it's not right. Okay.
If it's not my way, it's not right. And I've been deeply humbled over the years that my husband is actually correct in many ways. And if you're not listening because you're so busy educating, you'll never learn that there's other ways of seeing things that are also true.
And I even think about just like the species, like the human species as a whole. We think, we're like in the age of like, being woke or whatever. It's like, we're so evolved and our ancestors were just, blah, 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 blah. In the next 50 years, that generation is going to be looking at us now being like, I can't believe they believe that. That is so unevolved. Like, so when we judge someone else's unconsciousness or unevolvedness, we're judging the aspects of us that are unconscious and unevolved and are yet to be evolved. And like you said, there is no arrival point.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I've actually come to have a lot of reverence for the past generations. The older I get, the more I appreciate my parents. And my parents were not perfect parents. They were messy and they had elements of narcissism, but I can't judge because I have elements of narcissism myself. And I think everyone does. And to the degree that you're like, I have no narcissism, there it is.
Because I am perfectly humble.
Yeah. And, I have I made a podcast, I think my first year of business, saying like, what if I'm a narcissist? Because there was this fear. And I used to be so afraid of that, of like being a narcissist, that because I hated and judged people in the past that had hurt me. And as I said, the work for me has been seeing myself as the bully and identifying my own narcissism, and actually, I don't want to say become okay with it, but become accepting of it, and use, how I mentioned tension is good. Tension between my light and my shadow. My shadow charges me. It gives me energy. But if I completely act out of my unconsciousness, I hurt people. But I can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of my narcissism. It's there. So I try to channel it as fuel. And it's a practice. It's difficult. And because I can own my own narcissism, I can see others' narcissism with compassion. And now I'm very grateful for my parents. And to be honest, if I were in their shoes at their time, I don't know if I could do a better job. Considering the circumstances, my parents did a really good job. And the reason I bring that up is because I think, when we're able to look at generations through like a historical context, is like the times that people grew up in and lived in, and the tools that they had and did not have that we have today. It's very easy to judge the past generations, but because we're looking at it through our lens of the tools that we have.
What we know now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, listen, they didn't have these books that you're reading back then. And if they did, they were working in a factory and they had no time to read it because they were trying to feed you. So you really can't judge. Do you think you could do better given those circumstances? I couldn't. So with that has come so much grace towards the past, and paradoxically, therefore, towards myself.
Yeah.
And I know that the future generations are going to come and point fingers at me, and I'm going to say, you're right. And,
because this is what I know now, because this is what I have access to now. And I know future me is going to look at current me and be like, we were missing some things. There are some things we were a little off on, but she didn't know then what I know now. And just like I said, I cringe at my past self. I say that, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Based on the environment I was in, the context I was in, like what I had resources to internally and externally, like that was just like,
couldn't have done better.
I knew. And I thought I was really, really doing my best.
Yeah.
And she was doing her best. And
so much love to our past selves and our generations in the past. So freeing.
21, 22-year-old self. What a cutie. We love her. She got me here. That version.
Thank God for that.
Today wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that version of me then.
And thank God for that. We can say thank you to her. So I've found I accept what I've been given includes my past. And I found this to be so beautiful and humbling. And every day I thank my parents at minimum for the gift of my life, at minimum. Because if you have nothing else to thank them for your mere existence.
I don't want to think about how that existence came to be. It just gets a little disturbing when I think about that too much.
My parents are divorced, but recently when I came back, recently I saw them together because they were, I sold my car to go to Colombia. So my mom's like driving me around whenever I go visit, and she drove me to go see my dad. I feel like I'm 12 again. But there was a brief moment where they like said hi. And I had this little moment of being like, oh my God, you guys like made me. And like, there was a part of me that was like, ew. But there was another part of me that was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it really was such a sweet moment. And I think a lot of us don't, like I said, we don't accept what we're given with humility and appreciation, even if it's what should be, or like we're entitled to it or whatever. So if I had the choice, I would come and if I had the choice and I'd never experienced being Natalie, I would still choose being Natalie. I think it's awesome. And I have my parents to thank, and their parents and their parents and their parents. So this work, it's not just you and your relationship now. It's like your ancestors. It goes back and forward.
Yeah. Your relationship to all things. Yeah.
All things, the inner and the outer.
I knew this was going to be a fire conversation.
So good. I'm so glad we had seven polarizing beliefs.
And we could have gone on and on and on.
I know. Always. I love you so much.
I love you.
Yeah.
So glad
and
we got
thank
to
you
have
all.
this conversation.
So good. And for those of you listening, the outside of this inner conversation, those of you that are listening from the outside, thank you so much for listening to us and taking time out of your day and trusting us, trusting our opinions and trusting our perspectives. They really have brought me and Chelsea so much joy. So I take what works and discard what doesn't, I guess.
Yeah, because honestly, we're both full of shit. So, I mean, like,
I'm full of shit. Two things are true.
so, I'm just a regular old person over here. So take what works, leave the rest, and hope you found one of those 7 things to be thought-provoking, helpful.
Yes.
Something else? Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm very grateful for you.
Grateful for you. Mwah. Love you.
Mwah. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to the Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.